Champions!
I'll just be right here.
What's that?
People get another beer.
You had an emergency beer.
Emergency beer, right? Yeah, upset about her. I can't. Hey, us too. Yeah. You guys have some YouTube music playing in the background?
We'll edit that in later.
Yeah, we have two microphones going.
Hey Chris.
Yeah.
Check on your phone. I'm just gonna report to the screen sideways.
Oh.
Oh, that's what they were doing.
Oh, you know, I bet it's because of the way you have, yeah.
Might be good to taking this news, right? Sideways instead of
Yeah.
straight on. That's the only way to absorb all of this.
Lay down for this.
Right.
You gotta lay down for this.
Right? Oh,
Is that better?
yes. Smiley face. I got a smiley face.
Oh, you're second?
Yep.
Okay.
Oh, we're gonna have to connect.
Is it connected?
No, we gotta brace ourselves. We'll be back in a second. Good thing this cable is not here.
Huh? Mancini. Sorry, I'm just choking.
No, what?
That's been the best part.
Yeah, Bernie crowd in this area is amazing.
Yeah.
Is it on?
Cheese whiz. I mean, I knew some. Like, in general, like.
Sometimes we cry. Sometimes we cry a lot.
Yes.
Oh, I didn't even. I don't think they didn't until the election started happening.
Yeah, so. I mean, I've only been in Boise for.
Oh, I've only been here for like 8 months.
Oh, really? Is that right? Yeah. Wasn't always like this.
I'm from North Idaho, so I'm trying to like. Mondays are all very interesting. Having been there for yesterday, it's kind of just like. Started getting people to talk first.
I was
Well, I saw the light. I saw the light way over there. That's where it's on. It really is. Every building is.
Daniel.
How are you?
I took this in the summer and then classes start.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, they start early and then they're just a lot of the summer classes end at like, that was it. School starts. A lot of the summer classes start the week after school ends. They're trying to like use it to a trimester system, and it's just because it's not so crazy. No one is like taking positions. They're doing all of this. They're trying to push a lot of classes to summer, and then make teachers cover like a full semester in 8 weeks.
Thank you for your patience, everyone.
Anyways, it's silly.
Yeah.
We're nearly there.
Yeah, summer's supposed to be like kind of extra.
Yeah.
I think they want to do this for like their own.
Okay, so we're going to test the audio real quick to see if the live feed is picking it up. So if anyone who's watching online can give a sort of shout out if they can hear me.
Right.
It's incredibly delayed.
Yeah, it's about a 4-second delay.
Okay.
Yeah, where's the guy with the boot button?
It's just delayed, I don't know, but it's the right way, so.
Okay. Just a step in the right direction then, right?
Yeah.
So we have everybody here now. We got Caleb. We're still waiting on Caleb.
No, we're not waiting anymore.
We're not waiting on Caleb. We've given up on Caleb. All right. Well, let's.
I understand,
There he
you've
goes.
done enough.
Caleb, are you hunting Pokemon or what are you doing? All right. So
You can be the only special one.
All right, so let's go ahead and get started. First of all, thanks everybody for coming out tonight. This is really amazing to see such a big group of people out to support not only the delegates and the activists and the organizers who were out in Philadelphia last week, but also just progressive causes in general. So it's really fantastic for everybody to be out tonight. We have an amazing, huge group of people who turned out to talk about their experience. The way we thought we'd do this tonight, is kind of running through, maybe going day by day a little bit and talking about the experiences from the time we arrived, or from the time the folks arrived, until the kind of final day and the wrap up of the convention. And then at the end, I think it's really just, let's ask questions and have a conversation. I think afterwards the delegates and everybody will be hanging around, so grab them and talk to them about it. But I thought we might start with kind of the arrival. I think that'd be really interesting to talk about as you guys kind of got into town and what that experience was like. Brian Ernst is not able to be with us tonight, unfortunately. He was a member of the Rules Committee, and he was there on Saturday as a lot of those proceedings happened. But I think a lot of people were able to interact with Brian right when they got off the plane, right as they arrived at the hotel, and get some kind of insight into what that experience was like. So I was wondering if anybody would want to talk a little bit about that first, and maybe talk about how that set the tone.
I was just curious, did you talk about becoming a delegate in the first place?
Oh, that is an excellent place to start. Let's rewind even further. So anybody want to start with that topic? Kind of how...
Naomi, do you want to do that?
Sure.
He's got the mic.
This one's closest to you.
Okay. Okay.
You have to keep it low or go around.
So only speaking for myself, the way that I became a delegate was quite a while ago. Miranda and I started looking for ways to get involved locally, and one of the first people that we met was Caleb, right here. And so we weren't even really preparing for the state convention, but yeah, there was just a lot of events that happened all in a row, and it led us to where we ended up, and it just made natural sense to, when we got to those places like at state convention, to be those people that were running for spots, and then it was up to the people that elected us, which is more than, it's the reason why we're here tonight. For me, why I created this event was to actually say thank you and honor the people that voted us in and actually supported us, whether just emotionally, which was very, very important, or financially. But the way that we ended up becoming delegates was we started state, and that encouraged us to want more, and then we got voted in something. Really good question, though.
So, kind of fast forwarding then from there a little bit to, on a plane, arrived, getting to the hotel. I know that it was hot and humid, of course, when you arrived. But I think kind of the first people who may have had some interaction with Brian were and kind of getting that idea of what it was like. I know, Caleb, you had a kind of early interaction with him. Would you talk a little bit about what that was like, kind of hearing about that? I'm going to go around in front of you again.
So, I flew in Saturday, got there Saturday evening around 11, and just ended up at the hotel kind of by myself. Shortly later, Brian Ernst, I wish he was here so he could tell the story, but I'll summarize my experience of hearing it. He comes into the hotel and is just vibrating with emotion from what he had been through that day. The Rules and Bylaws Committee had met. they brought up several amendments. There were over 50 amendments submitted, all of them from Bernie people. Hillary's delegates or members on the committee had not submitted a single amendment to the rules. And I think there were 5 or 6 of them on superdelegates that just one after another just got crushed. Just nothing was passing. The vote numbers weren't changing. Some of them, I think those of us who were at the state convention can kind of recognize some amendments are written better than others. Some of those superdelegate amendments maybe weren't as good, and others were very reasonable, very well written, and yet everything was just right down the line. Same vote numbers basically every time, maybe give or take 1 or 2. And so the beginning of the meeting, the morning, early afternoon, was spent just having everything voted down. They then took a 2 or 3 hour break during, basically to push it past prime time, if anything was going to make it into the news, and were presented with a unity commission. It was pitched to them as something that was a result of their hard work during the day, and they're standing strong, and this is what we came together and we were able to get out of them. They were pitched as if it had teeth, that it would force a difference to be made, that this commission would be able to decide to take superdelegates out of the picture and make some real change. And that it was something that both sides could come together on. It was voted through basically while they were still handing out the printed copies of it. It was very prepackaged. It was all printed on DNC letterhead. They were unwrapping it there, and yet it was presented as if it was something that they had pulled together during this 2 to 3 hour break, which was clearly not the case. And they really pushed hard for a unanimous vote on this Unity Commission. Proud to say Brian was one of 6 votes against it out of well over 100. Once people had a second to actually read and digest what it said, there were 60 people that signed the minority report to send it to the convention floor for a vote by the delegates. The campaigns were able to get, I think, 12 people to rescind their vote, their signature on that minority report, so it never did come to the floor for a vote of the delegates. And so that was, as he was describing it took a toll on him. It was very clear seeing that. And Brian, for those of you that know him, is one of the more radical members of our delegation. But as he was explaining this to me, we had Rick Towsley from Northern Idaho and Pete Gertensen, who's one of our superdelegates, came in, and they backed him up completely, 100%. Yeah, this was something that was decided beforehand, that they came in and pitched as something that it wasn't. This meeting, it was pointless for us to be there. Everything was decided beforehand, and they took votes on it. After that was passed, basically everything after that just flew through. The party was happy to say, yeah, you get this, you get that. Some of the things, they were combining amendments so they could just pass them faster. Some of them, Barney Frank apparently was like, we don't even need to take a vote on this. It's through, it's good. Just happy to do whatever after they got their Unity Commission approved. Another thing they mentioned was that there were overheard some Hillary delegates at 9 in the morning saying, why can't we just vote on this Unity Commission thing already? And none of the Bernie people were even informed that it was in existence until later that evening, and it was something that was just pulled together because of their hard work standing strong in that committee. And so that was a very difficult tone to start the convention with, and I think it showed a lot of us the way that things were going to go. Yeah, are there any questions? I'm not sure what else to...
So Brian also, so I was not actually on the convention floor most of the time. I was a state delegate, and then I was a fundraiser organizer for most of these lovely people here. And I sort of joined last minute to make sure that I was there. So Brian and I only had hall passes, so we could sit on the mezzanine, which would fill up very quickly. There wasn't very much space. So we spent most of our time just wandering the halls and talking to media, which was actually quite an interesting experience to be in a completely different convention, but in the same building. And Brian gave a lot of very interesting interviews. He had a very long interview with KCRW, which has a nationally syndicated show, To the Point, I think it's called. And he ended up being one of the panelists that was on that show, along with Barney Frank, who he had very severe disagreements with because he had described Barney Frank's actions in the committee as very shameful and very bullying. People would get up and try to talk about the amendments they wanted, try to share their stories, share their reasoning for it. And he actually shamed people so hard off stage that they would start crying and apologize and walk away. And he reported this on nationally syndicated NPR. They cut that part out because Barney Frank was also on the program. But there was a lot of that. He told as many media people as he could about that and was really upset with the tone of how everything happened towards all the people that were trying to bring amendments to the floor. So we walked in, most of us on Sunday, and they had this amazing welcoming gala at the Art Museum where we sat and hung out on the Rocky Steps and was fed free booze and free food and live entertainment, and they just tried to booze us up and show us how awesome they were. And he, every time we saw him, he was just like, did you hear what Brian had to say? Did you hear what happened yesterday? Did you hear what happened yesterday? So we were already getting that tone from the moment we walked in, even while sort of being schmoozed by everything, which definitely carried on into Monday. So,
well, you know, something else happened that night. Actually, Mary's got something in there. Can you have that?
Yeah, Mary has it.
Keep it in front of you.
I guess I'm going to just stand up so I can do something else. I was actually on the credentials committee that met Sunday, which was very staid and polite compared to the protesters that were at the Rules and Bylaws committee and you know, the platform that had a lot of high-profile people like Cornel West and Nina Turner. But the same tone was there. It was kind of alarming, actually, because I felt I was really kind of intimidated by all the things that I was supposed to know, because the DNC put out this 135-page essential manual, and a lot of it were things that I needed to know for the credential committee. So I went through tried to bring out my inner lawyer and went through the brain-cramping process of reading 25 pages of these rules and procedures. And when I got there, we had an orientation, and I was like, okay. And in the folders for everybody that showed up were some of the things I'd already copied and studied and highlighted and, dissected the best I could. And some of these people, and in fact, at least 15 that I counted, that I know for sure, had never seen this material, and I guarantee you that they were completely unprepared and were just there, which was a lot, kind of concerning to me. The same tone that Brian experienced in the Rules and Bylaws Committee continued there. It was as if everything was pre-planned, and in fact the two co-chairs got up, Lorraine Miller and James Roosevelt, who apparently have been involved in the Democratic Party for decades. And Mr. Roosevelt was also had a role in the Rules and Bylaws Committee. Anyway, they just stood up and told us that it's going to be really easy. They showed us how to use the clickers to do a vote, and we're just going to breeze through this. We're going to be done. We're going to adjourn early, no problems. Everything's been decided. And I looked at, we had a copy of the Rules and Bylaws Committee report. And at the end of it, it said that we have determined that there are no credentials challenges. That's it. And so all we had to do was just vote through a couple things and we were done. But that wasn't really true. I started looking at the Rules and Bylaws report, and I saw that every single state and territory had some kind of challenge, and that it involved delegates that were either subtracted or added or leveled off to some kind of average that they predetermined. And I know that in that committee that the Clinton delegates were in the majority, so whatever they voted, that's what happened. And I'm not quite sure how that turned out, to be honest, because I haven't talked to Brian about that part of it. But anyway, there we were, and Mr. Roosevelt got up and said nice things about the party and introduced all the people at large on the panel, one of whom was an actress, Rosa Perez. I don't know what she was doing there, but whatever. And then he went through this list of people that in the party that had helped and blah, blah, blah. And Debbie Wasserman Schultz, who was the gold standard of service. And all of the Bernie delegates, myself included, booed loudly at this tone-deaf comment. And things kind of devolved from there. There were 43 states that apparently had no delegate challenge. I was surprised because one of them is California that has standing lawsuits, and I know that there are some other states that also have ongoing lawsuits. So I wondered why there were no challenges. I couldn't believe that there weren't. But I had nothing to base my vote on. There was no information, and so no other comments were acknowledged, no other anything. They said, now we're going to vote. You know, aim your clicker at that light over there. So we voted, and I abstained because I didn't know what was being done, basically, and I'm sure that some of it was wrong. What are you saying? Oh. It's not recording? Okay.
Sorry.
Okay. Well, I wrote it all down in a long, boring report on Gmail, so you can read it there. Anyway, after that, we were supposed to vote on these other states, and one of them was Maine. And thank goodness the fellow from Maine was there. And when they were about to vote on this second block of states that actually had challenged credentials, he stood up and said that there was an unresolved issue. And Mr. Roosevelt said, oh no, see, the Rules and Bylaws Committee have put it through, there's no problem. And he said, no, you've been misinformed and you're wrong. And they went back and forth for a while. And people supported him, and he got up and explained this incredibly complicated situation that basically it was one of a Bernie women who was also working I think for the Democratic Party, was asked to step down because there was an imbalance in the delegation. And the Democratic Party is very inclusive and has very specific rules about there must be a balance, a gender balance, and you have to include different groups in order to have a diverse delegation. So she was asked to step down, and then the DNC put in somebody that they thought was good, that was never elected or appointed or anything, and a lot of people were angry about this, and that was the cause of the challenge. And so that went back and forth for a while, and eventually there was a woman outside. The woman that had been asked to step down was yelling from the hallway, which was one interesting moment. And at some point, the fellow from Maine finally got a series of resolutions going to vote on. And people supported him, even some of the Clinton people, because it seemed wrong. And it was long and detailed, but after an hour and a half and help from the parliamentarian, we managed to put the delegation back to its original, almost its original composition. And that's what we did. Yay. So after all of this irritation and it seemed like useless activity, the co-chairs got up and told us, well, isn't this a fine example? Here we've done something really great. We're all unified, we've all worked together, we've all accomplished something, and it's like, I call bullshit, So actually one of the ladies got up, she didn't say that, but she was saying, I feel like we spent an hour or more just correcting a mistake made by the DNC that wasn't necessary. And by the way, we were all offended by your remarks about Debbie Wasserman Schultz. And that was it. That was the Credentials Committee, and that was my service for the IDP.
Yay! Do you have a copy of the report? Did you take one? Or?
Did I what?
A copy of the report?
Yeah.
There's a copy of the report available online, I believe. The Rules and Bylaws Committee, I have a copy of that.
So, I'm sorry, Chris, were you? Okay, so I think that what we've heard a lot about I think there was a lot of low moments coming into Saturday and Sunday, but something amazing happened Sunday night, right? You guys go to a welcome party. And I would love to hear some of how that welcome party kind of went down and may have not been exactly what they expected. So, anybody want to talk about that?
Can I? Well, hold on. Yeah, I'll go.
Okay.
Bill.
I finally had my moment.
Okay, can you introduce yourself?
We were.
Can you say your name?
I was thinking that too.
I would
Yeah,
love
we
to
don't
know
know
your name.
everybody. Just say your
Oh,
name.
my name is Bill Sifford, and I'm actually a Valley County delegate.
Hey Bill,
And
can you get real close to it? I know they're having a little trouble hearing on the live stream.
That's Mary Reale too down there who was on Prudential.
I said it once. Mary.
well, yeah, it was. There were. Oh yeah, it was the band. The band was playing. At the end of the band, well, I was told to follow a woman with a red dress because she was signing things for something, some petition. And so I went up to talk to her about signing this petition. And her at the end of a song, the band member said, and for our next presidential nominee, Hillary Clinton. And this woman just got infuriated with him, and they were nose to nose, toes to toes, and they were about to get it on, and I don't mean. and so I followed her back over to a table to try to do the signature.
This one is super loud. It's right now. Okay, can you use that mic? That one's a little louder.
Just a second. There's a flying light here. Spit it out. Spit it out. So anyway, we started a chant. After this guy had just gotten up there and just brazenly endorsed Hillary Clinton in front of the entire audience, it was a real slap in the face, a real lack of impartiality on a part of the band member. And so we started a Bernie chant. And I'm proud to say that I was one of probably 3 people who started chanting Bernie. And then people just started coming from all over the place. And we're chanting Bernie, Bernie, Bernie. And I noticed there was a bunch of people up on the steps of the museum who would not come down from those steps and walk through our crowd to get to their bus. So yeah, Sunday night that was pretty awesome.
And to be clear, this is like long before we had a roll call vote saying who is going to be our nominee. So that was a large part of a lot of what we're going to talk about. I think is that's an important fact to keep in mind.
And I also want to mention that, like when we first got to our hotel, we got a kind of DNC welcome packet that was filled with different magazines and papers all about Hillary Clinton. There was not one Bernie thing, and it was before we even attended the convention at all. So all of these things start stacking onto each other and really lay the tone out for us that we're not there in any way to even acknowledge Bernie's existence or the reason that, we're there, almost half of the delegation is there for him, that it was all a pre-planned Hillary coronation.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of confusion from people on the other side why we were so upset, and I hear this from so many people like, oh, you guys just haven't been around, you don't know how it works yet, you're new, welcome, but figure out how it works and we'll get you involved.
Or not.
The problem with that is maybe we don't know how it works, but that's why getting involved, we've looked at the rules and we have been studying these rules for months, and reading the rules has given us no clue into how it actually works because they are not related. They are not related. The rules do not recognize in any way a presumptive nominee. They say that the process must be impartial, that the DNC must be impartial until there is a nominee, and it specifically lays out what makes a nominee. And there is no official nominee until the acceptance speech is completed. Once she finished her speech Thursday night, the last speech of the last night of the convention is when the rules say we have a nominee and this process can stop being impartial. And so when we arrived there and everything was pointed to Hillary being the nominee and eliminating any voices that said otherwise or wanted otherwise. That's what was so offensive, is because the way that it works has no basis in the rules that are supposed to describe how it works.
And to kind of play into that, the disappointment that we felt, I think the first day was the hardest hit for me. And I didn't understand what we were getting into. But what I knew was that I was going to be prepared because people were sending me there to do something and to have a voice. And so I would get home from work before the convention and I would be like, okay, when can I fit in some time? There's a couple documents that are really important to study. When can I fit that in? We made it work. We got together a lot and we did it together, but we also did it independently. And then the first night happened, which was Sunday before convention, and we had that big, weird party. Yeah. People were, it was a crazy party. I've never seen anything like it. Everything was free and stuff. And then, so, this is one of my regrets. I didn't drink very much. Because I had one beer and all the stuff was free. You could get double shots or whatever. I wanted to be sharp. I wanted to be sharp for the people that sent me there. And that's fine. It was a close party, like it was weird and cool, but I didn't drink there. And then the next day we did what we did, and we'll probably get through the details of that day of Monday, the very first day. And then on the bus on the way home, I was like angry at everyone after Monday happened, and we'll talk about it. And I didn't know why, and I was bitey at people. And then I realized I just needed to cry because it was a really disappointing day. It was kind of a heartbreaking day. I didn't need to be sharp. I didn't need to be there.
So let's start talking about Monday, because I think that's an interesting segue. That's the first day of the convention. That's the first. Oh, sorry. Question over here. Oh. The live stream is totally frozen, so I will go work on that. But let me pose this question, then I'll go out there. So Monday, I think that that's the first day you guys load on the shuttle buses. You guys are camped. How far out were you from the actual?
30 minutes. About 25 miles.
About 25 miles out from the
Depending on the time of day, like.
Yeah, that was 30
to
an hour.
40 minutes to an hour on the shuttle to get out to the convention. So you get out, you get credentialed. You head out, actually Monday morning, before you even got credentialed, I think, oh no, you went out you got there, but I think that not everybody got there as easily as there were challenges. There were definitely challenges. And so I was thinking, Alonzo, it'd be great to hear a little bit about your experience getting to the convention in the first place.
Well, I arrived Sunday at like 5, and to kind of put a little perspective on it, I had started talking with a guy by the name of Ted weeks before the convention to set up the accessibility things that I need. Just accessible transportation and an accessible hotel room. Door wide enough to get in the bathroom. That's all I asked for, and none of that was provided. Got to the airport and was told, "Oh, we're done with wheelchair transport for the day at 5 o'clock on Sunday." Even though I knew when I was coming in, and. So we're stuck trying to figure out how Uber works, all of that. And, one saving grace of the whole thing is just the natural supports of all the wonderful people that showed up to be there. All you guys, all the people from the other states, Hillary and Bernie alike. There was really a small minority of the bad actors that had orders and were carrying it out. That was the only saving grace, because everything was a nightmare from the get-go. And Sally was a big help. She actually came and picked us up, brought us back to the hotel. Sally's the executive director of the IDP. Yeah.
Yeah, so let's move to Monday and talk about what happened after we actually got into the convention hall. So Well, actually, someone should talk first about Monday morning. So Monday morning, before we even started the convention, Bernie Sanders had arranged a meeting for delegates only. So if you didn't have a delegate badge or a media badge, you were not allowed into the room. And he invited them in, and then Naomi was doing it on Periscope. So Brian and I sat outside of the hall and watched it on Periscope, and were interviewed by New York NPR while watching it. And it got very frenetic at the very end, and we weren't really sure what happened, and then everyone came out crying, and so it was a very interesting experience that someone who was in the room should probably speak to.
So, yeah, we had a private delegate speech from off-site. So there were 2 convention centers in Philadelphia that we were attending. A lot of the caucuses and meetings and whatever happened at the Pennsylvania Convention Center, and then you could ride the subway or grab a shuttle or an Uber or whatever and go across town to the Wells Fargo Convention Center where the actual convention that you saw on television happened. So the Bernie speech was at the Pennsylvania one, and keep in mind the tone that had been set already for all of us showing up, and so we were excited to hear, from our candidate, and I don't remember who all introduced him. There was Ben Jealous, and was there Rosario Dawson, and then Bernie spoke, and at the end of his speech, he asked us all to support Hillary Clinton, and the room just erupted in boos toward that suggestion, and it was an emotional time for all of us because I think we all went with a different idea of our role, and then that kind of maybe solidified what we were imagining was happening for us. So that was an emotional time, and anybody else want to speak to that?
It seems like there's this big hole. I'm sure for you guys, but also for us. Like, what did he say?
So Claire is asking if Bernie said why he wanted us to support
why was he
Clinton.
taking himself out? Like, what happened?
Well, I mean, if we're being honest with ourselves, he lost. And in reality, he got fewer delegates than she did, and I mean, at a certain point, you have to admit that you are not going to win that. But I think I can't speak for him personally, but what he says is that he did hold out a lot longer than most candidates do when it's clear that they're not going to win the nomination, and I think that was a bargaining tool that he used to get. I'm not perfectly happy with everything that happened. I'm not happy with a lot of things that happened, but I am happy that several of her new plans, including her health care and her college plans, look like his plans, and our platform is a lot better than it was going to be. And I think that was a very smart political move on his part to hold out that long before endorsing in order to get some of those pieces from her. But I know that, definitely a strategic move really on his part. But at some point he did have to come out. And I mean, because if he doesn't want Donald Trump to be the president, I think that's one of his main motivating factors right now.
I think it was just made clear to him somewhere along the process that he wouldn't be winning the nomination. And I think that by holding out until right before the convention, he was using his leverage to the best of his ability.
So where I stand with this is I don't think there's a way for us to know the whys. And a lot of the questions were about timing. Why then? Justin, you were saying that he held out longer than some would maybe. I just don't agree. I think that it was very confusing to me, and the only truth that we have in all of this is the way that it made us feel. And it made us feel things, like feel things deeply. To have somebody, to have that happen before the convention, when what we were preparing for at the convention, all of us had different ideas of what the convention would look like. But in my head, it was, I didn't think we were walking away with a win, but I thought that we got to go in there and fight, you know, in a contested convention. And the timing for the endorsement, as I've said, pulled the rug out from underneath that. I don't understand. No one does. He has not said why. He would if he had.
Said something to you.
He has not. I'm sorry, the answer is no.
Rationale or, yeah, it felt like pulling
No.
the rug out.
We were kind of hoping for that, and we kept getting support Hillary. And that was the part that broke our hearts, because we thought maybe even in that room for the delegates, he might say why then, not necessarily why altogether.
And then James said something to him. They don't know you're going to put your name in for the nomination, but then that didn't happen, right? I mean,
His name was put in on Tuesday.
Well, but not like we were thinking.
Well, we had an official roll call.
So we can kind of maybe move on to the next piece.
Yeah, so the next piece is getting there. Are there,
Another question?
I was crushed to hear him endorse or the way. But then I heard his wife talking just a few days ago, and I think, don't quote me on this because I'm super hard, but I think she said something to the effect that they realized he was going to lose, and I think she meant no matter how corrupt it was still a fact that, in the end. And that they had been talking with Hillary a lot, working real closely with her, and I got the impression that she thinks they have instilled in him some of the values and the mission that the burners all over the country, presented in this huge uprising. And I, for one, am thrilled because for the first time in history, someone brought the F word up, fracking, over and over and over. We're members of the Don't Frack Idaho. We've been fighting for the last couple of years, giving our lives to try and stop it before they turn this sacrifice on the veranda. One of the biggest reasons she ran for praise God was to try and stop some of these senators. But anyway, if he hadn't fought as long and hard as he did, that all would have disappeared.
Yeah.
And he brought it in. We're seeing a fight back from the energy industry, from some horrible commercials, about energy voters. That's all bullshit, witchcrafting and all this. So he started a movement, and my hope is, my prayer is, and I think Bernie and his wife's prayer is, that all the millions of people across this country that stood up for Bernie Sanders on that issue and a lot of other issues will push just as hard at Clinton with those same issues to where she cannot ignore us. If she gets elected, she cannot ignore us. And I'm furious that I'm in a position where I have to pick Clinton to keep us an insane egomaniac like Trump out of office, I'm furious. I don't know what I'm going to do then. I'm furious that I'm in that position, but I think that's the answer for me, is that we need to keep this movement up.
Hold feet to the fire.
Across this nation, we need to keep moving up. It's Clinton harder than controlling the industry is influencing her, and I think
Yara Slayton. So I think it's important to say at this point, kind of like the conditions under which we were operating by then. So just to be clear so the first thing was the party, and it was like a wine and dine, so you could just get warm fuzzies and feel so good about being there and all that. And then the first night was the beginning of a series of several nights of sleep deprivation that deprived us of our ability to have any sort of clarity. It was like debilitating. It was depriving us of our ability to think clearly and to plan and to organize. And just 3 hours of sleep a night is about what we average. So, and I think it's very intentional. And even the Monday thing. So that was after one night of party and then sleep deprivation, picking up our credentials, and we went and listened to Bernie speak. And I think that was like one of a series of extremely like devastating blows to our resolve. And many of us, I mean, I chose to only watch bits and pieces of him endorsing Hillary before then, but just being in the room with him within like talking distance and hearing the words come out of his mouth, and that's why the room reacted the way it did. It was devastating, it was heartbreaking, and we had all at this point struggled so much to get ourselves in that space to stand for the people in the revolution. And on day one, to be told, never mind, after all the sacrifices, like begging our family and friends for money and pouring our hearts and soul and time and energy and all that, and that was day one. And straight from Bernie's mouth, it was so hard for the soul to process all this. Besides the sleep deprivation and all the indoctrination and the messaging and the messaging and the messaging that we were getting, that was a rough day. I mean, I don't think there was anybody that wasn't anywhere from like angry to like sad, bawling, crying. Like everybody was on an emotional roller coaster in that room.
I just want to, for me personally, kind of counter the thought that it was a never mind moment. I mean, every word he said except for vote for Hillary was about continuing the revolution, continuing to fight on a local level, getting involved with politics, getting involved with his new organization, Our Revolution, which is what his campaign turned into, which is going to fund and help find and train candidates across the country to fight for progressive values up and down the ballot. So I share the disappointment of not getting the figurehead, but we can't let that be a demotivating factor.
I just wanted to say too, you know, when Bernie was giving that speech, I mean, you could tell his heart was breaking. It was breaking as much as ours was. He did not have a happy heart. He did not have a happy heart when he was giving that speech on the first night. I mean, he was really broken up. And later on during the convention, I mean, you could tell. I don't know what happened behind the scenes. You know, we all speculate, you know, conspiracy theories, and I believe in them. But I mean, his heart was not in endorsing her at all. And at breakfast on the last day, he told us, "You make sure and hold her feet." He didn't say, I'm paraphrasing, hold her feet to the fire, because you know she's famous for flip flopping and not. I mean, her word isn't worth a dime.
I also want to just say, maybe I'm Miranda Gold, that maybe Bernie said that in that moment with us, aside from just setting likely to probably set the expectation for what we were about to step into and going to the convention. I'm sure he knew about the, you know, schedule and the proceedings that we were about to be subject to. And maybe that helped to mediate some of our feelings, hearing it from him in that moment. So when we did get to the convention, it was from the invocation speech, which brought up Hillary Clinton, to every speech thereafter for the entire first night, which was all about Hillary Clinton and, you know, barely a mention of Bernie, which a lot of the various states' Bernie delegations would boo at every chance that they heard Hillary Clinton's name, because it was not the reason that we were there. So yeah, that was just that was the first day. That was our first realization, totally submerged in that.
Can I just add that I hear what you're saying, Justin, and I keep those things very separate from me. I'm always going to do the grassroots work and try and get progressive elected at every level, and fight horrible legislation and endorse good legislation. All that is work that I will continue to do and have done before and after Bernie Sanders. I think in that moment, the devastation in that room, the heartbreak in that room is what I'm trying to capture and kind of convey. But I think many people are like, well, yes, the revolution has to continue. Like, revolution or bust is, yes, it's a real thing. This, like I've said many times, this country's at a boiling point. And we need the revolution now more than ever. But there was a lot of heartbreak in that room. There was just heartbreak in that room. Yeah, heartbreak.
Is there still a question in the back?
We're definitely going to get there. I think that's one of the things we want to definitely close on.
We will definitely be touching on that. Yes, thank you.
Definitely. There's work to do.
On what is next, what comes next for the revolution is what he was asking, and in local races and beyond. Yeah.
Maybe it's not the right time to ask or to have you all speak to this, but I would be really curious because there's some folks up there who we haven't heard from. I would be really curious to hear what would you like us to take away from your experience in Philly? If we could do like, just going down the line, like what's the takeaway? Whether or not it's your own personal experience or what you want us to know.
And as far as, honestly, I definitely want to put that out. I think that's something we'd probably like to do towards the end also, so that we can all leave with that right in the tip top of our minds, rather than doing it earlier, and then there's a lot to think about after. But thank you so much. We definitely do want to touch on that. I guess with Monday, just real quick, on Monday, looking back, at the time, it was probably the most difficult day of the convention. It was soul-crushing. Absolutely, being in that room was so difficult. And having them start off in the prayer asking for Hillary Clinton to win when we went there to fight for our candidate
Really long prayer.
was soul-crushing. Absolutely. It was so difficult, but looking back, the consistent boos, the noise that we made it known that we were there. And looking back, that is one of the most beautiful days of the convention, knowing that we made our voices heard. The look on the convention chair's face when she realized she could not shut us up. It was beautiful.
She was really upset. She was shaking.
Well, yeah, and that night I had finally made it to the floor and had to use the restroom, and after all the booing and that, they did not want to let me back on the floor. And I was able to get back on with Sally's help. I'm Alonzo Statham, sorry, I forgot that part. With Sally's help that night, and that was the last time I was able to get on the floor.
And it took 3.5 hours.
Yeah, 2.5, but...
You have a question?
Well, I mean, I came on late, so I apologize if this has already been touched on, but some fairly hot news is a couple heads rolled at the DNC today.
Yeah.
You guys...
Yeah, the question was about some people who left the DNC today, or were asked to leave today. So I don't know if anybody has any information whether wants to talk about that at all.
Talk about Washington Schultz first. When did you guys get the news about Washington Schultz, and how did that?
While we were, right when we got there.
Sunday.
It happened Sunday, so a lot of us got to the welcome party, and that was everything we were talking about right then. Because she stepped down, and then 2 hours later was hired by the Clinton campaign. So.
I guess, if I could expand on that, that's progress, and at some point you got to stop debriefing the last game and start planning the next game.
Well, yeah, this is a
So Miranda and I have been thinking about this, and so he was saying that was progress, and then the 3 people that resigned today as well, like, what are some thoughts on that? And Miranda and I have been talking, and she'll probably want to put in a few words, that even leaving a few figureheads behind, the system is still there and the corruption is still there. So it doesn't really matter who's running the DNC. The DNC is still functioning in the exact same way, regardless of who's actually in charge of it right now. So in a lot of our minds, those are sort of just token things to say, like, oh, haha, sorry, and then just keep moving on doing things business as usual.
And also very frustrating that the way they address it seems to be, it's so unfortunate that these emails were sent out. They were completely inappropriate. It's not about the emails. It's not about the emails. The emails show that from the very beginning it was not an impartial process, that the way that they set up the debates was actually with a purpose. That so many other things. It's just the smoking gun. Don't apologize that the gun is smoking.
So oh, Mary's got something down here.
Yeah, I wanted to bring up something. I wanted to bring up something that hasn't been touched on yet. I also had a particular credential that didn't allow me on the floor. The same as Brian and Chris. And so I was outside the floor a lot. And I actually, the gavel time when you're supposed to be in your seat to vote really didn't mean anything to me. As likewise, some of the speeches in the evening, I just left early. If they were too much, I just left, It's time for self-care, time to go to bed. So anyway, on one of the things that touched me, I went to the same meeting and sort of like got in anyway to hear Bernie, and I was disappointed, but it didn't really hit me until I took the subway down, and across from the Wells Fargo Center, where the main convention is going on, there's FDR Park, and it was filled with hundreds of protesters. And they all had Bernie signs and, all the protest signs for Palestine and the TPP and just everything you could think of. And they were behind like a 7-8 foot fence. And along this fence were police. And when I got out of the subway, I started walking, and I realized these people are like chanting their hearts out, And that's when I really got upset. And I felt really bad for them, I mean, we went as a delegation, we raised money, we were kind of official, we're staying in hotels. These people are out there camping, and it's 100 degrees and humid, and they're out there, really committed, and it made me feel really bad for them, and I didn't know what to do. There were police everywhere, and so I just took my cell phone and held it up and started walking and filming. And I, put my credential up. They didn't know what credential it was, so I guess they assumed I was a delegate, which is fine. And I held it up to show them I was in support of them, and thanked them and put my thumb up and everything I could do, and started walking along the fence. And of course, they started cheering and everything. And I don't know, I just felt like shit, frankly. I felt bad. I felt that, these were really such idealistic people that had such hope. There's a Facebook page called Journey for Bernie, and they're all just doing this on volunteer basis. People are like cramming into cars and drove all the way across the United States, and here they are, and they're behind a fence with all these police like they're criminals, and they have really good intentions to be there, and that really broke my heart, actually. And fortunately, it was good footage. I was stopped at the end. The police were right by the fence, and it was clear they were not going to let me go further, so I just abandoned that. But I did get a lot of footage, and I sent it off to one TV station in Philadelphia.
I don't know how many people did the march on Sunday night, but the same thing. There were people everywhere. I don't know what you heard back here, of course, but you couldn't see the front of the line and you couldn't see the back of the line as we were marching from City Hall to FDR Park, chanting, drumming, and there were thousands and tens of thousands of people there marching. It was really a good feeling to be with those people because, like you said, they're idealistic. They were going to camp there at FDR Park, and they really put, these are people probably don't have a lot of money or anything to put into this, and yet they're taking a week off work and they're going to camp and march, and we can be really proud of them.
So we actually have one of those people.
Hey, so I'm Daniel, and yeah, I had a pretty different experience than most of these folks. I was outside, and so right now, actually, I kind of want to give a little background. I don't want to talk too much at once, so I'll give some background. We were talking about the endorsement and how that affected. So I just want to give some background, and then when we come back around to like takeaways, I'll tell you some more about the experience and what I really got from it. But I got involved back when Naomi and Miranda were starting to organize, and I kind of just touched in and plugged in with them a little bit. I've been like in and out. And then at the caucus, a couple people were like, "Oh, you should run for a delegate." So I was like, "Okay, sure, I'll do that." And so that I was a delegate at the state convention, and I planned to go to Philadelphia, and we were talking about running as national delegates, and I decided that wasn't my place, but I'm going to go to Philly, and I'm going to be in the streets. and like some time went by, and I was like on the road a bit, and I was like, I don't know, the passion kind of faded, and I was like, I don't think I want to go, and there's some things I want to do in Boise instead, and I had this trip planned to DC. Well, the plan was, I had this trip planned to DC with the Sierra Club, actually with Brian Ertz, so it was a funded trip. I had a plane ticket over to the East Coast. I was just going to stay there, make it down to Philly, all that. Yeah, time went by, and I was like, I don't think I want to go. Got some stuff to do here. I didn't even really feel like going to DC at that time. And then the state convention happened, and to me, that was like, I didn't really enjoy that too much either. So that just kind of kicked me down even more. And then so I reluctantly went to DC, and I was on the Hill lobbying. I've never done this before. The only time I've been to DC, I was like 10 with my grandma. We went to some museums, right? So I was on the Hill lobbying, and I saw that world, and that was a trip, man. The culture there is a trip, and I really saw into it and was like, it's this, the structure and all that is not that fucked up. It's the culture that is so wrong, and these people in there are like, they're not people. There's no personality. There's no individual. They're just like a bunch of, it was a bunch of frat boys like playing this game. It was a trip, man. And so I'm in there and really like getting a glimpse into this, and then we're sitting outside. This was like 2 weeks before the convention, right? Me and Brian are sitting out on the lawn Tuesday watching that endorsement on live stream outside of one of the, where it was the Senate office building, watching this. And dude, like all the feels, right? And that the rest of that day was a trip, and that night was really emotional. I cried. And meanwhile, we're there with like, we're on the Hill, so like nobody's into Bernie, and like this, some of the people we were with, they're like, we're like environmental activists basically on the Hill, and some of these people are like Hillary people, just like whatever. It was weird. And the next day, as I'm at the airport getting on a plane to come back to the West Coast, I'm like, shit, man, I'm going to Philly. I gotta go. Yeah, like all these people are signing off. Like I gotta go now. And so as I'm doing that, as I'm getting on a plane to come back to the West Coast, I'm finding this Journey for Bernie, this caravan to drive my ass back to the east, right? And so there was a buddy, like we were talking. He was planning to go, and then he was touching base with me that day, and like about like making plans to go backpacking. I was like, wait, are you going? And he's like, not anymore, but it wouldn't take much to convince me. And he's got a family and everything, so it didn't work out for him. But us talking about it got me like, I plugged in, and so he was kind of on the fence, and I was looking for other plans. And last minute, Tuesday, I got on a Greyhound, went to Salt Lake, got in a car with all these people I didn't know to drive across the country with a bunch of other cars of people we didn't know. Nice. And yeah, it has been something else to see. Yeah, it was quite a different experience. And we showed up, like that in itself was an experience getting over there and the group dynamics, and that was like a microcosm of what I experienced at the DNC. And the first day we got there Saturday night. Sunday, I ended up at this rally. I thought it was the rally. I thought it was the march. No, it was the climate action march, which was kick-ass. There was a ton of people, like drums and music and all this stuff going, and we ended up at this park, and there were speakers and all this stuff, and it was huge. It was really cool, and I was just walking down the streets smiling. Huge. Yeah. It was like, I think it was the biggest thing all week. So we were there, and like this thing was happening, and I had high hopes, right? And then the rest of it kind of went downhill a bit from there. But yeah, I'll stop there for now.
Thank you.
Just FYI, they might be different birds, but apparently the birds like to come for Bernie. The birds!
So, let's jump forward a little bit, because I think we've hit on a couple of topics, talking a little bit about the protests that were starting, the chanting that was starting, the signs that were going up that were not authorized signs, and how that kind of came together. And I think, Tuesday was a really impactful day, right? That was when you guys did the roll call vote. That's when the walkout occurred.
I think people probably want to know a little bit about what that organization looked like, and then when you walked out, where did you go? What did you do? What was it like outside the convention? So does anyone want to start?
So the people that were organizing the Occupy the Media was called Coalition of 57, and they had been working to get whips in every state, not just for organizing at the convention, but for after as well, so that we could work on things combined at all the states combined, working on really good things moving forward. But at the convention, they were working on this one in particular, Occupy the Media, and I think the way that I analyzed this was one of the reasons that it worked so well was because they didn't put the information out until about an hour before, would you say? At the most, which meant the whips that were to give the information to the delegations about what we were doing and why we were walking out or occupying the media, it just really worked to have it be about an hour before, because there was not a lot of room to talk about it. It was just like, I'm in or I'm out. Am I in? Are we in? Okay, we're in. I guess we're in. Like, and so the whips had to come up. We always, when the Coalition of 57 puts things out, they want you, the whips, to put it in your own words so that it's like, okay, delegates, here's what we're doing. And so the purpose was, after roll call, we knew how roll call was going. We all knew what was going on. We knew exactly how the results were going to be. It was to leave the room of celebration and go out and have the voice that we came there to have. It was genius to me, in my own opinion. And it worked. It just worked. I got out there very early on, and there was like 15 people for like 30 seconds.
I was so nervous.
And so I was looking around.
We're the only ones here.
And it was a small amount of people for long enough that I was like, it's okay. Like, I was like, I did it for me. And then people started piling out, and it was seriously one of the best days of my life.
It was the cavalry there starting to see it.
Like, absolutely.
That big banner comes out.
Yes.
Like, whoa, it's happening.
We all got to be there in the way that we wanted to, and be like, you don't want us to have a voice? Fuck you. So that was the experience for me.
So, if I can speak. So the way that it ended up working out brilliantly, and I loved how they organized it. There's a lot of conflicting reports about how many people actually did it. I was on a Huffington Post blog that aired on Thursday, or aired on Friday after the convention was ending, and Harry Reid was quoted as saying less than 100 people walked out of the room. We had over 300 at the Occupy the Media event, and that wasn't everyone that left the halls. There are pictures of nearly 1,000 people missing from the halls. And the 300 or so of us that made it to the media tent, about half of us got inside, half of us were stuck outside. So what ended up happening, as soon as we hit capacity inside the media tent, the cops locked the doors, and we were essentially detained until the chief of police negotiated with the DNC for our release. But the inside group was instructed to remain as silent as possible so the media could work. This is their working tent. There's tables and laptops set up everywhere. So there was about 12 seconds of chanting, and then most people put tape, like they were literally writing on masking tape and duct tape as we were sitting there and putting it over their mouths. There's lots of footage of that. Many of us stayed silent on purpose, and then there was supposed to be one representative from each state that was asked to speak to the media. A few other people spoke up as well, but the entire media tent came running forward and was confused as balls. So what ended up happening when we realized this was going to be successful was when Washington State's delegates came out, and they had brought a dozen banners, huge blue banners with various signs on them. Still Sanders, Congress 2.0, various different statements. And someone handed me a banner and was like, let's go. And so he had a band tied around his mouth. I grabbed the other side, and then we led the march inside the building, and we formed a front between the media and everyone behind us that was seated. And just stood there for about an hour and a half holding a sign up and trying not to make it look how uncomfortable we were. Literally with hundreds and hundreds of cameras 3 inches from our faces, taking as many pictures as possible, dozens of video cameras, people saying, "Can I talk to you?" just asking questions, and we just sat there looking at them. There's a really lovely one on my Facebook of me looking around smirking, just be like, "This fucking happened, dude." Like, because the only way to like not blink profusely when there's hundreds of cameras in your face is to sort of like make a little face. But it was an amazing event, and there were so many hundreds of people, and we decided at some point that we were ready to go join the Black Lives Matter rally and the Black Lives Matter vigil, and we tried to start assembling to leave, and then we weren't allowed to, because the DNC wasn't sure if they were going to allow us back in or not. And the chief of police negotiated our release, and we were told we could either silently enter or we could silently leave the grounds. And most of us ended up leaving the grounds to join the outside protests, and that was also one of the most powerful experiences, I think. So the entire day ended up just being amazing experiences over and over and over again, and it made a lot of us feel like we actually had a voice for once, and gave a lot of power to what we felt we had completely missed out on Monday and the first part of Tuesday.
And the police were awesome.
They were the best. The Philadelphia police the entire time were by far the most friendly, helpful, respectful police force I've ever encountered. They weren't in like stormtrooper riot gear. They were all there as humans interacting with other humans, and it was amazing to see that because it was such a contrast to the 1968 Democratic Convention that we had just watched. We had a movie night watching a documentary on right before going. So we were kind of prepared for that, but it was really cool that they weren't like that. But I actually wanted to talk about what happened after we walked out of the media tent.
Yeah, I just have a quick question because I heard through non-mainstream media today that there were actually 2 roll calls. So I heard originally that they had tried to switch it to the morning to avoid the Bernie people, and then they actually did a morning one, and there weren't enough Hillary supporters.
So
Bernie actually won.
we've heard this too. That's actually not true at all.
Okay.
So what she's asking, in case you couldn't hear, is there are rumors that there were 2 different roll call votes, one in the morning, one at night. That's no. They didn't try to do a vote outside of the business hours. We did have to sign in to get our credentials on Monday morning. And you select your candidate at that point, but that was not a roll call vote. The roll call, it was legitimate how the roll call vote was done as far as we could tell.
And we filled those out Monday morning. I think Idaho's a little ahead of the game on that. I think most people did that Tuesday morning from what I could tell. And from the reporting also, it sounds like those without the superdelegates, it sounds like is what I've heard reported, and I don't know for sure, but it sounded like what was being reported is that not enough of the pledged delegates for Hillary showed up, that Bernie actually won, when it was just the pledged delegates. But then the roll call on the floor that was actually televised included the superdelegates as well, and that's where he lost.
Yeah, which was the actual roll call vote. Yeah.
A video that kind of implied that Bernie delegates or supporters were being removed from the convention.
Not just so she's she said she saw video. Just so everyone can hear, she said she saw video of that suggested that Bernie people were being removed from the hall. Not just for being Bernie delegates. What I saw, I do have some video myself of it, but for being really rowdy protesters is what I saw.
For having a voice.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. There was no violence. There was violence on Thursday, but against Bernie protesters, not by them, that we saw. But we'll get to that.
So this is actually good, and that might be a decent segue to talk about kind of that ratcheting up of those, the tension as you went into, following Tuesday, following the walkout. I think that there was, you could tell there was a lot of, people who were nervous about what was going to happen next, what was going to happen during the president's speech, what was going to happen during Hillary's speech. What did you guys have planned? Because it didn't seem like anybody saw that walkout coming. Like you said, it was organized right before. So if you could talk a little bit about the ratcheting up of that. I think, we saw some really incredible improvised signs. It's like they pass out the approved signs, and then like you MacGyvered into all kinds of different things. Could you talk a little bit about that? And kind of how that came together?
Sharpie magic.
I don't want to take away from that at all. I'm a little bit on something different, but after Tuesday night when we walked out, and many of us didn't make it back onto the floor that night at all, there were a couple of delegates from northern Idaho who saw printed in their hometown paper Wednesday morning an article reading that as of Tuesday night, the Idaho delegation has united. They are all behind Hillary. There was some grieving, but they have made it past, and we are all together now, united for Hillary.
While we're like marching in the streets.
While we are marching in the streets, literally. Mind-blowing, but it's the narrative that's being put forth by the party, and if there was someone dumb enough to print it in northern Idaho, when they're going to get called out for that, there's nothing further from the truth.
And I would point out that it's probably not by the Idaho Democratic Party. I think that
there was someone in the party that was the source for that. It was quoted multiple times.
I think we know who that was. But anyway, most of the Idaho Democratic Party has been really very open and accepting and awesome, and it was a big contrast between the state party and the national party for sure.
That person's not part of IDP staff.
No, that person is not part of the Idaho Democratic Party staff, just part of the organizational structure, I guess. And I do want to reiterate that because a lot of states had a lot of internal conflict where their organizational state parties were kind of condemning their actions and threatening to take their credentials and kick them out and putting people who didn't belong in their seats and all of that kind of thing. And we are really fortunate here to have not had any of that at all. And they were advocating for us and totally behind our choice in how we used our voices. They believed in our ability to do that in a genuine way, and so I just want to make sure that we're differentiating the national party from the state party, because I heard us actually have a pretty good Democratic Party here. So
I guess as far as the signs go, and I'd love to hand it over to anyone who hasn't spoken yet, because we all saw plenty of things with the signs. Yeah, here we go, Jordan.
Yeah, Jordan. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Jordan Ariano, in case you don't know me. So with the signs, it was pretty devastating to watch what they were doing. So let's say that I'm holding up a sign here in protest of something that I don't like.
Or just like this one.
Or just like this one. So what would happen? What would happen is, let's say that these are like 4 Hillary supporters, which they're not, but let's say that they are. They would like stand up. Yeah, so
we would have bigger signs.
And so I would hold up my sign, and there would be 5 people in front of that person holding, huge banners, basically. And there are videos of people actually having signs taken away from them, like ripped out of their hands. Not in the rules. And I have a video of this happening, of them holding up a huge banner in front of someone who's protesting the TPP. And I tried to get closer to film it, and the convention staff, was like blocking me from filming it. Wow. And I was like, what are you doing? Get out of my way. Like, it's my right to film this. And so basically it was just a massive censorship exercise. I can't even describe how it felt to be there and to see people holding up signs. And there were things such as like no TPP with a cross through it, which Clinton has said publicly that she does not support it. So everyone there should be opposed to the TPP. So it just made no sense that they were doing that. And so flipping it on the other side, for the Clinton delegates, they had signs that they were passing out. For each person's speech had some key phrasings on the sign that they would say stronger together, or unity, Hillary, Michelle, Obama, and so on. And so it was almost like watching lemmings. Like they would pass out, they would be like desperate for these signs, and if they like skipped a row, they'd be like, where's my sign, where's my sign? And then they'd finally get them, and they'd be so proud, and then they would just say whatever was on the sign. And like there was the opposite of organic, no thought.
So in front of us, they were the in Kansas, the party, like, it was the Hillary campaign had created a bunch of homemade signs that were all like, you know, like what you would see at a rally normally, like the really organic looking whatever, like drawn, yeah, exactly, like flowers, handwritten, all that kind of stuff, and was handing them out across the whole convention floor, which I thought was hilarious, just because it was like the least organic, like organic.
So to get at how unorganic some of the counter protests were, I think the most defining moment was when Petraeus was speaking, and a lot of the delegates, so California led a lot of our protests, but this was one that we all joined in on when they started chanting "No More War." And we got really, really loud, and we kept going. And about 30 seconds in, every single phone for every state delegation started ringing across the convention floor one by one. And then in unison, the entire Clinton delegation started chanting USA and standing up with signs. Not with any sort of like, some areas started first, some areas started second. Each phone rang, and then the entire floor broke out in once. And that was when they stopped censoring the audio in the background and the televisions could hear the chanting. So one of the interesting things not being on the floor every night was that we could hear when they cut out the noise in the background, because we were watching it on the televisions by the concession stand. And there was one time when one of the speakers was saying, "I'm with her," and we're expecting protests, and they cut it halfway through her, so it was "I'm with her." And then everything went silent on the televisions as we could hear the protests happening inside the convention hall, and no one on the television saw that.
Can I say something?
Yeah. Hi, I'm Alicia Garza. I'm also a delegate. I was kind of shy. Thank you. I just wanted to say it was very disheartening to hear, you know, it was very sad to hear Mr. and Mrs. Khan give their, you know, their speech about their son who died 12 years ago, who's Muslim as well, and then to have retired General Allen give that bellicose, you know, jingoistic speech right after that. I talked to my brother who's a Vietnam vet, and he found it highly offensive. He said, you don't do that type of speech after a fallen soldier. And with my experience, I tried to hold it together. I'm 58 years old. I've been an activist. I've been in movements, and you know, there was that little bit of pessimistic me that said, "Oh man, we're in for it." You know, you can tell. But that's what made me break down, and I, you know, cried uncontrollably, or how youngsters say nowadays, pretty much ugly cried. I could not stop, you know, to hear this couple give their speech, and then, you know, all this screaming of USA drowning, you know, out the "No More War," you know, asking for peace, you know, which this is all about. And it was a Trump rally. It turned into a Trump rally right then. And Jordan described clearly how this young man was being removed from there. This one, I think I can't remember if he said this woman punched him twice or hit him twice before they removed him. And that's when I started getting, you know, a bit scared there. And my heart just shattered for all these young activists, because I thought, damn, we're back to the 60s again. Thank you very much.
Do you want to speak?
Well, I'm a Vietnam veteran, and Wednesday night, the Hillary people decided they're going to show how great a person Hillary was. And so they had these widows of veterans get up front and talk about how Hillary had really saved the day when they gave them, I think it was $100,000 for the death of their husband in a war that she started, or that she voted for. And I had the worst flashback that I've had in probably 20 years. My whole body tightened, I choked, I couldn't breathe, and I got a visual. And I used to put young men in body bags. That was my job in Vietnam. I was a low-level medic that we'd bring them off the chopper and but anyway, the pictures that they were showing, it just pissed me off so goddamn bad that she would use the destitution of these young women and their mothers and show pictures of the families. And I got a guy I carry with me.
Thanks, Phil.
We saw it, just so you guys know. There were things that got through on CNN and things that got through on NBC and ABC. And we got to see the protests that were happening, and your voices weren't completely silenced, and we were there with you. So I want you to know that it wasn't all Hillary all the time.
Thank you.
Thank you. You could see it breaking through. And you could see the signs. They would accidentally show up, when they would move the camera really fast, or as soon as they could hear you, they might switch cameras to where you weren't, that it was there and it was prevalent, and we knew it. And I just want you to know that we were aware and we were there with you in spirit. So
I'd like to add to that too, because I watched a few conventions, and the camera work on this one was hilarious.
Right.
Because they were all over the place. They didn't know where to put the camera because things were slipping through. Yeah. And so you would see it. They'd cut from one camera that was now panning across the entire thing real fast to another, and they couldn't even get a shot there because
you would see it stop her. Yeah.
Put the blue shirts on and
then walk the walk. Right? Oh my God! So many walk the walk. So many.
Yes.
So you were loud and
we tried.
Thank you.
Yes.
We tried.
I also want to say that there was like a strategic way that they put Bernie heavy delegations on the convention floor.
Yes.
So like, I don't know, what was there, like New York and
yeah, a lot of
a lot of the heavy Hillary or like split southern states and things were sitting right up front, right in front of the stage.
And they had to sit Bernie Clinton couldn't sit together.
Right. So they broke up the delegations and then
they assigned your guys a seat?
Not ours.
Idaho didn't assign ours, but there were several states that you could see the actual signs in the seats, and they were separating the delegation by their vote.
And people didn't say screw this trading.
They tried.
They wouldn't let
Yeah.
I would have.
So we were pretty close to California. We had Alaska.
California rocked it.
We were fairly close to Washington. Yeah, California. They were legit the whole time.
No, they didn't. The white noise. Sorry, the question about the white noise machines, that has been coming up a lot too. Those are these boxes that are in lots of arenas. I don't know what they're for, but they exist, and they were around everything, including in the sections that weren't seated, and they were there from the very first day that we were there. So that was a misconception by one of the California delegates, saying that it was, and that's also not what a static noise machine looks like either. So it was that was a false piece of information that got out. However, I wouldn't have put it past them, but that's not actually the case. Yeah.
They definitely did something with the noise, because I listened to it on the radio, and the first night you could hear you guys get strong. No more war. I was like, yes,
Well,
up on the mountain, yes. They're saying no more war. This is awesome.
So a big part of that was actually the planning within the Hillary delegations. So
But it was never that loud again. You never heard that much in the
Yeah, they responded
on the audio that I heard.
they might have been sampling the audience less.
Well, and we start questions from the audience soon, just so that they feel like they can.
Yeah.
Can you guys maybe talk about when they turned out the lights and Halo shirts came out?
Oh,
yeah!
So that was a coincidence.
I don't think anyone knew it was going to happen.
It was Colorado.
The back's the same as the front.
So Colorado is the one who did the shirt initiative. They kind of reached out to various states and asked if their delegates would be interested in that. Jenny Buller, one of our delegates from the Ketchum area, was the contact, and she hooked up a lot of the shirts. And no, that wasn't part of the plan. We didn't realize that we were going to have the lights shut out on us, and we didn't realize that these were going to glow in the dark.
And not only that they would shut out the lights, but they also had black lights on the crowd. So like these were the only visible thing in the entire hall.
And they kept going back and forth. They kept like, oh, we need to turn the lights on. Oh, we'll get them down. Oh, well, turn the lights on.
There was too many of us either way.
Yeah.
You didn't know those were going to glow in the dark when they came?
No. They glow in the. They're like a black light, kind of, not actually like glow in the dark, but.
We didn't know they'd have black lights.
Right. We didn't know that they'd have black lights. So we don't want to. We could probably talk about this all night because this is an opportunity for us to decompress and talk it through too. But we want to open it up to questions. If you guys have any questions.
I do, because everybody keeps saying, hold their feet to the fire, hold their feet to the fire. But how? I mean, clearly she's going to do what the F she wants to do. So Obama came out today saying, I'm still president, I still support the TPP. So how do you suggest we keep her feet, besides burning them off?
Okay, so the question is, they keep talking about holding their feet to the fire. How exactly do we do that? How do we put that into practice?
So how,
right.
How do you fight that?
And honestly, I believe it comes down to what Bernie's been saying the whole time, that this isn't about getting one person into office, even if that office is president. This is about getting millions of people active in American politics and in being civically active citizens. And so that when they're in that Capitol building and they look out the window, they see millions of people. We obviously have held her feet to the fire enough to change her position during the primaries. I heard on the radio today, John Podesta, her campaign manager, saying when it comes to TPP, this is not a campaign position. I promise you, before and after the election, she is against the TPP. I'm with you. I don't know if we can trust that. But if we keep our voices as loud as we have been, and we get more people to join with us and keep them even louder, that is how we keep their feet to the fire. The way that we keep their feet to the fire is being active politically and demanding it. We cannot go home and sit on the couch and be happy to watch our politics happen on CNN.
And we can't just post about it.
We can't just post about it. We need to be active. And holding their feet to the fire is by voting, by getting others to vote, and by educating the public on situations.
I think that in terms of actual action, that one of the most important things we can do right now is to work with people in other states and flip the Senate. All of the least likely Republicans to get elected are in swing states right now, so get out the vote campaigns in the swing states and getting people to vote them out of office can possibly give Bernie a chance to lead the Senate and can actually make some things happen if that is the case. And so I think that that's a good step to work with other states, and it's something that's tangible and possible in November.
All right, so for some of us who are knowledgeable in that way specifically, and I know you don't have time right now, I'll message you.
Just side note, Lee sent me to the convention. Side note, Lee sent me to the convention.
Just stay active. That's right. We may not have plans with step 1, 2, and 3 right now.
Like, it was really helpful when I went to that thing in the library in March, and it was like, you said, why are you here? And I said, because I'm fucking tired of hearing they can't win.
Yep.
And then it was
Stay active. It really is that simple. Stay active, stay connected, and there will be a group here in Idaho. There will be a group here in Boise making things happen, and just stay involved. That is step 1 through Z. A through Z, stay involved. And Heather.
Well, I just wanted to say something. My name's Heather. I've been involved in the Democratic Party for the past 6 years. I've been very active in progressive politics. I'm unaffiliated. I'm not actually Democrat. I work for Democrats all my life. I'm also a Hillary delegate right now. And I want to say that first and foremost, okay? And style you want. But I'm a progressive. And I've been a part of the progressive
You're welcome
generation.
Yeah.
Voice
Absolutely. Thank you for being here.
Thanks a lot.
But our state needs us so much. I've seen so many races lost and won by 7 to 50 votes all over the states. I've knocked in rural areas that are so conservative that it's like that it's scary to walk to their doors because they can totally shoot you. And so, if you really want to make revolution, get involved locally.
Absolutely.
Because this state is so valuable. This state is so oppressed. This state is so disconnected and so changeable because everyone's pissed. They're the most pissed than any other state because we put in a part of this one-party rule. And everybody's so ready for a change. That's why this revolution has been so active. It's because non-presidential elections mean everything. Stay involved in local politics. This is not a party, this is a purpose. It's not a candidate, this is a cause. This is progress for everyone.
Totally. Thank you so much, Heather. I would make one other point too, and a president can't veto or deny something that doesn't get to their desk. So, go ahead. Oh, was it?
That question.
Sorry.
I think that impressive ways to get people to vote. Educating on voting. Because there's some people that vote. I've worked with a lot of different nonprofits, a lot of people that voting costs. They feel like their votes don't count. So you have to educate them on how local voting matters, rather than like, okay, everybody votes for the national. But you have to educate people. That's where it matters. Progressive people. And I think we could educate those people to vote and the candidates they need to vote for. I think we could just change a lot. Awesome.
Totally.
Harley and I are starting a nonprofit currently right now called Engage Idaho that's specifically about civic engagement. It's nonpartisan because a lot of us are independent and not affiliated to any parties but want to promote progress and want to be involved and want public school transparent and accessible to people. So if anybody wants to get involved, please let us know.
So same kind of, Justin and I went to a progressive candidate training put on by Democracy for America in Philadelphia. I'm running for State Senate in District 14, and he's my campaign manager. So we went to this progressive candidate training, and they're telling us all about how progressive campaigns look totally different than a traditional campaign because they're totally based around issues and organizing on issues and getting people out not on political affiliation or getting people out on party lines or whatever, but just to get people out on the issues that are important to them. And I think that's a good direction for us all to look to issues that we're passionate about to stay involved in the meantime.
Coming home from this, my focus has really shifted from the national to the local. Especially being in Idaho, I don't want to discourage anyone, but I don't think we're going to change the outcome of the presidential race in Idaho. And we can be of much more use working for our local candidates. I am not going to be working for a presidential candidate from here to November. I will be working for local candidates, and I invite you to do the same.
I'm trying to remember what I had one other thing.
Sorry, hold on to that. Something that really inspired me reading Bernie's book, Outsider in the House, is that before he was elected to the House of Representatives in Congress, that seat had been held in Vermont for well over 100 years by a Republican. So we should not give up hope here in Idaho. We have a chance. And when we saw the outcome at the march, the people that turned out for the march for Bernie back in March, that was incredible. That was amazing to all of us. I think we drew so much strength from that march. And to be completely honest, I think we have the opportunity to make Idaho a progressive stronghold. It is not as red as it appears. Idaho is not as red as it appears. Absolutely. The Republicans didn't have that kind of... That caucus was amazing.
Biggest caucus in history, baby.
Absolutely.
And during spring break, like...
Yeah.
Vermont is so much like Idaho demographically, you would not believe it.
Yeah.
The rural areas, the people. I mean, I thought if I lived in another state besides Idaho, it would be Vermont. You know, I live back there in the timber framing back there, and it's very similar. You know, because that's one of the things that I see here.
We're both very independent.
Yeah, and look at how many people went for Bernie versus Hillary for that progressive, you know, picture there.
Yeah, how many just break through the party.
Red, but we got a lot of blue too.
Yep. Yeah, we do.
Well, it's just a little short thing. I mean, I live in a subdivision, and everybody is a Republican, I'm fairly sure. And our next door neighbors, who, you know, everybody has guns and dogs and big pickups, and we are the weirdos from California that moved there. And before I talked to my neighbor out by the mailbox, and we started talking politics. She found out I was going to Philadelphia. And again, this is the year, if we're ever going to, you know, get people's attention when Trump is running, because even though people are Republican, they're not completely crazy. And she was expressing all this frustration. She said, well, you know what? If Bernie had been the candidate, she would have crossed over and voted for him.
We would have been
and you know, and she, her husband said the same thing. You know, they were just completely disgusted with what had transpired, and that might be a great talking point.
I've heard that bunch too.
And one of the big takeaways for me from this experience was that the presidential election is not the most important thing. The most important thing is for us to refocus on local elections from the bottom up. And if you think about Republican success, Tea Party success, that is how they've been so pervasive, as they focused on local office. And if we want to have you know, a progressive movement that's legitimate, that's where we're going to have to focus. So we need to bring it back away from the presidential election and bring it down to local politics now.
A question?
Yeah. I don't really know where I'm going with it as a question, but have you guys heard of the 100-page report from Election Justice USA? What are you guys' thoughts? I mean, it's just more for the future too, as far as making sure that it doesn't happen again, and
Elections Justice USA, I believe that's headed by Shyla Nelson, who was actually on the stage as the second, gave a speech as the second for Bernie's nomination, and was also to some degree involved as the spokesperson for the Coalition of 57 and the walkout. Shyla is awesome. Totally 100% behind what they're doing. It is, we'll see. So their questions are about basically the legitimacy of the election, and I haven't read up on it as much as I need to, but there were so many questions.
well, from what I know, it's 11 states that there are questions based off of machines that have been hacked, based off of evidence of voter registration being changed and forged signatures in 11 states, and they're asking to decertify what's been done in those 11 states.
So they're saying that there's 184 delegates difference that should have gone to Bernie that went to Hillary based on.
That's right. And so I would encourage everyone to follow that. Who knows what that can actually do or change in our messed up system right now. But I would encourage everyone to follow it and to support it, because there were some serious issues with this election.
Was there any talk during the convention about keeping that from happening in the future, or like
not on an official level?
Not as much. We were very focused on the then and the there.
Right.
It was.
We just went for a show.
Yeah, it was just it was pretty much
We went to be delegates, and we ended up as
Props. We were props. Not even spectators, we were props.
Right.
So
we were props in a commercial. Is what we were.
Now that you guys are back, can you join the class action lawsuit against the DNC?
Yes, and many of us are.
Would you do it again?
I wouldn't fundraise and ask people to donate to send me again. Us being there, we had no voice. We had no voice there.
If I went back in time and you asked if I would do it again, yes. Like, I walked away understanding things more clearly, 100%. But there would be no point to do it a second time.
What's wrong there? Yeah, like that you were like
Somewhat. Do you want me to try and recap it?
I think there was a question.
Okay, that week there, I come away feeling like our system is more broken and more hopeless than I ever realized. But I recognize that it's not. It's exactly as broken as I ever realized. There's just no room to say that I'm just being a cynic anymore. The emotion of being slapped in the face with it, as like firsthand, it was visceral. Seeing that, I think we all felt sick at some point, and it was the most ugly, depressing week I have ever been through. At the same time, I feel like the people that were there, the Bernie-crats that were there, were the most beautiful, amazing, powerful group of people, and we will change this country more than I ever realized. But it's not more than I ever realized. It's exactly like I knew before I went. But seeing it firsthand was the most beautiful, inspiring experience. It's hard to wrap my head around that week.
And in just a second, I'll get to your question, but I just want to say that most of the people, all of the people that I have been around, it hasn't been a just right now kind of thing. It's been a how can we change things in a big way. Everyone that I've been around, like there's so much out there that says we're going to go away, and I think that it fuels the fire, the burn. But I think that we also will all show up in different ways. We all have different strengths. We all see things differently. I have the passion to do things. I've been inspired by macro work for quite a while. I want to change things before they turn into issues. I personally I don't think that the Idaho Democratic Party, everyone chooses to use that route. And I myself am kind of independent in the way that I'm going about things and the change that I want to see. People on the inside and the outside, I think it's really important. What was your question over here?
And I want to thank you. So many of us, especially Monday, it was so soul-crushing being in that room. But I know that many of us, I can't speak for everyone, but I know that many of us, maybe all, drew on the fact that we knew that you were at home. And we knew that you had sent us for a purpose. And whenever it got hard, we knew that we had to represent you. Even if it was difficult, and you gave us so much strength there. I want to thank everyone here at home, everybody that sent us, everybody that cared. Thank you.
And we repeated that over and over constantly and everything that is happening. Like, we don't care if people are mad at our protest. I don't care that people are yelling me on Facebook, telling me I'm a moron. We are here to represent Idaho. We are Idaho delegates.
To say something as well. You know, people were criticizing some of the delegates. Some people were criticizing some of the delegates because they raised money to go to convention and saying, you know, you raised all this money, you're wasting people's money by walking out on Tuesday. But this is what the people who elected us wanted us to do. I paid my own way there through my brother. He was so proud of me being elected a national delegate, so he footed the bill. But that's what my family would have wanted. I come from a family of Mexican activists. My dad, he wrote speeches for the Mexican Railroad Union. And I talked to my brother at length on Sunday night, and he goes, this is exactly what our family would have wanted you to do, just to walk out. You represent the people. You know, you want change. This is how your voice gets heard, by walking out. And I went into the media tent, and I got in the middle of it, and I was like, ooh. but I thought, you know, you all gave me strength, people who voted for me, and my family gave me strength. And so I thought, I'm in the right place. And what happens, and as the cliche says, what it is what it is. So thank you very much. Thank you all for giving me that strength.
So as y'all were in there fighting that battle, the battle outside was very different. And so I've never done anything like this before, other than, like, you know, our little marches here in Boise. The activist scene was very, very new to me. And so it was like I had a fresh perspective, and it was a whole new world. So the battle y'all were fighting in there was against, you know, whatever it was against. Ours was against ourselves, really. And so, like I said, that first day I came and I went to that big march, that I found out was not it was the climate action march. And then I heard about this picnic like a mile that way that was going to organize some events. So I walked over there and I ran into, oh, this is the Bernie March that's happening 2 hours later. And then I ended up at that picnic, and there was like 12 people there, and it was like nothing, it was just some anarchists, and nothing was happening. And then I made my way back 3 miles back to FDR Park, which is the one outside of the convention. And I was like, where is everybody? And some people were talking about, oh, there's going to be a documentary, and Naco and Medicine for the People are going to play, and Susan Sarandon and some other people are going to talk. I found out, no, actually that's at a park that's 45 minutes north of here, yeah, exactly. Right? And then City Hall is like, a lot of things were happening at City Hall and around City Hall, and that's 3 miles north of FDR Park. And then there, like in a mile, like in between there was this other park that Occupy the DNC was having events the whole time, and at FDR Park, FYI Philly was having events the whole time, and City Hall there was events the whole time, and then we're driving 45 minutes to this campground to camp, and I tried to move my stuff to FDR the first night because I thought, cool, we're all just gonna like camp in the park, we're gonna like do this thing, right? No, there's like 6 other tents there, so I like pack up my stuff, and then I drive all the way to this thing, and then I drive all the way back, and then, you know, and so I'm like really upset coming home to our campground that night, and bummed out, and then I run into our crew, and then here's the other side of our crew from Washington we hadn't met yet, so I met them, and they're like all lifelong activists, and so we get in this conversation, and I'm like expressing my I'm upset, I'm expressing it, and they kind of have the same experience, and so we're talking about like what do we do, how do we bring this together? So like that was a good night, and seeing and having that conversation. But then the next day, same thing, like we're running all over town, like to this event, and like, oh, where's the event? And so you see, whatever you saw was like no one was together at one point in time. So it was this fragmentation of everybody's here with their different groups, their different organizations with their different agendas, and there was no unity. And so that was the big struggle we were having. And so to come together and understand that all these causes, as big as they are, they probably all sit under an umbrella issue, right? And if we can sit down and have this conversation and come to that together and have some unity and be in the same place and let go of that ego of like wanting your event to be the event, then we can get somewhere. The other big thing is what is your message and how is it being conveyed? Is your message clear to the public? There's a lot of things going on that it's like it's not really very clear what it is. So I mean, one example is like there's a really controversial one, the flag burning. And so to some people that's a symbol of our government, and we're not happy with how the government's